Welcome to How We Heard It, the podcast about music, pop culture, movies, and more, with your hosts Wayne Bledsoe and Chuck Campbell.
Welcome to How We Heard It. This is Chuck Campbell with
Wayne Bledsoe
and
John Baker.
Hey guys.
Hey.
So here we are at 2025. And that means we are halfway through the 2020s, if you can believe that. So we are as close now to 2030 as we are to 2020. I guess that's not too surprising, right?
That's just math.
Yeah, that's just math. And we are also a quarter of the way through the new century. So if it feels like, now see, that's a little scarier, right?
Yeah.
So if it seems like 2020 wasn't that long ago, we're 25% of the way into a new century.
Right.
And for a reference point, we can look at if you look at the year 2000, that doesn't seem that long ago, right? But it's at the midway point between now and 1975. So we are as far away from the year 2000 as it was from the year 1975. Wow. And if you want to look at it the other way, we are as close to the year 2050 as we are to the year 2000.
Yeah, that's even scarier.
Yeah. I'm trying to find something to scare you guys. And it all depends on your age. And I know people who were born this century, they're like, yeah, whatever. But I think anybody born and then crossing over a century and then just seeing how far away you're getting from the previous century, it gets a little weird. But enough math freakouts and all that stuff. I think this is a good time, of course, this is what people do, to look ahead to the year ahead and really the decade ahead in music and, kind of what we hope to see and what we think we'll see or maybe what we're worried about. But a good way to get there, I think, would just take a snapshot of the last 5 decades, just like one at a time, like starting with 75 and just a few trends that were going in at the time. And I've written down some, hard.
Really?
Hard. Yeah, I have. I've written down page after page. This may be the most notes I've ever written. So that's why I'm trying to move along here because I don't want to.
I have nothing. So you have.
Okay. All right.
We're counting on you to fill up the airways.
So the problem is starting with 75. Wayne, you're just a few years older than I am, but your knowledge of music is like a whole generation ahead of me or beyond that.
Maybe a couple of generations.
Yeah, you were pretty much studying music from the time you were a toddler, and I didn't even take it seriously until I was an adult and assigned to write about music, and I didn't ever go back. And John, I know you also... you go way back further than I do too.
I started collecting records when I was 12.
Okay.
And I had an older brother and older sister, and I stole a bunch of their records too. But
I had older sisters, but I didn't care about what they listened to.
I think I'm kind of midway between you two because I've been studying music as an art form.
Right. Oh no.
Probably since I was in 6th grade.
All right. Well, I'm going to charge ahead here and go look. And what I want to illustrate is just how much actually does and can change from decade to decade when you don't expect it to and when you think it's more subtle than it is. And you go back and look, it's like, wow, there was a lot of changes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So let's go back to 1975. Okay. R&B music was doing fine. Pop music was doing fine. These were good like singles music, like the pop singles and the Hot 100s and stuff like that.
A lot of albums too. The album was still the thing then.
Yes.
Right. Well, that's what I was going to draw a separation there. The singles artists, the people with the hot singles, weren't necessarily the top albums. The top albums were white men rock bands, just all across the board. And it was even an era, I think disco wasn't in full swing yet, but it was definitely going, and all that. So different things kicking around, but white male groups. It was usually 3 to 5 white guys in a band, bass player, drum player, guitar player, singer who might not play an instrument, possibly a second guitarist, maybe a keyboard player, wasn't mandatory. But and it was all these guys from the U.S., from the U.K., from Canada maybe, and that was it. Everybody else, they were their audience.
Right.
So and to just quickly look back, I was saying that pop music and everything was going well. The biggest single of the year was Love Will Keep Us Together by Captain and Tennille, right? So pop music was definitely going.
Yeah.
But the albums, Elton John had 3 albums at number 1 that year. He had one that carried over. Don't ask me what they were. He had one that carried over, one that was during the year, and then one at the end of the year. Paul Simon had one too. But those bands, you had Led Zeppelin with, I can't even read my writing, Physical Graffiti. You had Chicago, Wings, Eagles, Jefferson Starship, Pink Floyd. Yeah. So it was just like a absolute domination.
Right.
And I guess back then, album charts, that was the bigger money than singles.
Oh, for sure.
Okay. And of course, that fueled also tours and merch and all that. So even though you got representation like on the radio and everything, the big money, the big power was in rock bands.
Yeah, but at that same time, sort of the undercurrent that was happening that was going to change everything was disco.
Right.
And punk.
Right.
Which were both not in... I mean, punk was a reaction to
to those bands that
you
just
to
listed.
all those big,
Right.
what you call dinosaur bands back then.
Right.
Because they were so huge, they were so big, everybody listened to them, and they were like produced to the max.
Right.
And so punk is a reaction with simple songs, short songs, and just get it out there.
High energy.
Yeah, high energy and no pretense.
Right. Well, and that's I'm looking at my reference point from at 75 exactly, but we can look a little bit ahead to where we're going in 85.
But punk, that's when like the Ramones started in 75. So it's
right.
there.
It was
not broke.
Right. It was at the cusp, and like I say, disco was started, but it had bigger years to come.
Right.
Well, and also all of this, I'm a studio engineer and a musician, so I'm thinking in terms of recording technology at the time. And in 75, there was no digital recording. There were no digital effects.
Right.
It was all analog tape. In 75, there probably was 24-track, but not everyone. There were some still doing 16-track recording.
Right.
And, my favorite era of rock production is 70 to 75.
Okay.
Beyond 75, you start getting into digital reverb and digital effects, and things started sounding much more artificial and much more flashy and bright and
pitched vocals or whatever.
Yeah. And to me, 75 is probably the end of the era of really natural sounding recordings.
So we're starting at the end with you here.
Well, no. Well, kind
the end of it all.
Kind of,
but with punk and sort of the back to the original stuff, it came back. Some of that stuff was just blasted out there as quick as they could.
Right.
So it was a reaction. Everything you're going to bring up, there's a reaction against it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, while we're talking about this, the business of music and the technology and everything, I guess vinyl was dominant, right?
Vinyl, and that's right when cassettes were really becoming the thing.
Well, first let me ask you,
75?
did people... Okay.
I think that's
I know there were
cassettes.
some cassettes.
No.
I know there were...
They were 8 tracks then.
Yeah, well, tell me about 8 tracks. Did people really listen to those?
I still got a box full of them.
Oh, my God.
I've got it's the stuff that I don't want to get rid of because it's like...
You can't get it any other way.
Well, I've got Metal Machine Music on 8-track, which is the worst way to have that album. And
well, I understand that the 8-track sounded better than a cassette, right?
That's a bigger piece of tape.
But
initially it did.
But there was the problem of like, I know somebody, I have such basic zero knowledge of 8-tracks. And every time I hear it mentioned, people are like, 8-tracks. So I was like, were they ever really serious? And that 8-tracks songs would be split from track to track.
Oh, it's terrible.
My God. How is that okay so like it would fade out
and
then start over again on the next...
Not start over, it would fade back up where you faded out.
Oh my God, that's just...
It was terrible.
What a terrible consumer
It's a horrible
experience.
format.
Yeah.
But 8-track was really the first format that allowed people to take music in their car and play it in the car.
Right, exactly.
Because prior to that, it was just you had to listen
Exactly.
to the radio.
Yeah, exactly. And you need that accessibility, which
Right.
we've just grown further and further into all of that, and having everything you want whenever you want it, wherever you want it.
And initially, cassettes didn't have the sound quality, but later on they did. But yeah, it's about 75 when cassettes started really coming in, because by 78, I was making mixtapes for my future wife.
Huh. Well, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, you're older than me. You have better memory.
I don't know if I got
but
better memory
vinyl was
than I remember.
vinyl was the dominant format.
By
yeah.
far.
Okay. And back then, was that corporate? Was it major labels and corporate radio and dictated top 40s for all of the nation and that kind of stuff mainly?
That is about the time, it's the mid-'70s when the corporate takeover of little radio stations started happening.
Okay.
And the programming was all happening out of Cincinnati or Atlanta or
Right.
one of those places, because they would pump out the playlists to all of their stations.
Right.
Because prior to that, you had lots of little independent stations, and they would make their own playlists,
Right.
and you'd have regional hits.
Right. Yeah, we talked about those.
Yeah, and that's about the time that went out the window.
Well, we can talk about the death of corporations controlling playlists, too,
Right.
with the very next decade. So if we can leave the 75 behind, because I don't want to,
Right.
hang out too long at any one decade. So 85, we talked about this in an earlier episode, how MTV debuted in 81,
Right.
blew up everything.
Yep.
They blew up the corporate control of playlists, and MTV just played whatever they wanted to. It was a hit on major labels. It was a hit for a lot of these classic bands who didn't keep up with videos and all that stuff.
And the hair metal bands like luxuriated in MTV.
yeah.
Oh yeah, they were made for it. Well, the hair metal bands, and you had new wave. We've talked about this. New wave, synth pop, dance, synth dance, neo punk, right? And goth and all this stuff. And you had
Power pop. And power pop.
and power pop. Yeah, and you had all this stuff marching in with, more women, more people of color. You had more representation. You had more artiste types, like more David Bowie wannabes, right? Than actual David Bowies. So everything changed. And this was just one decade from 75 to 85.
And punk music had had its effect by then. In
Right.
75, it was just barely existed.
Right.
But when it finally did hit and then exploded, and New Wave was the corporate response to punk because punk was too ugly, and New Wave put people in skinny ties
Right.
and pork pie hats.
Gave them hairstyles.
Right.
And,
Right.
Prettied them up a little bit,
Yeah.
made them not so scary.
But I think that even bigger than that was rap and hip hop coming in.
Well, that's
what changed.
That's
To me,
just
that's the
starting. Now
biggest
you're
change.
jumping up to
I'm
95.
sorry. Well, but
thinking that.
but I mean, the rap starts in the 70s.
Right, but it wasn't.
Hill Gang
It
and
wasn't
all
a
that
mainstream phenomenon in the 70s.
No,
other than it appeared in some disco hits. But it wasn't just like. I mean, it wasn't the force that it was to become.
No,
right?
but the 80s is really where that started getting.
Yeah,
Taking-
it is.
taking
Yeah,
root.
and like I say, I'm focusing on 85. By the late 80s, especially, rap was really taking hold. Around 85, you had the Public Enemies and the NWA stuff like that were finding their grounds. And it really ballooned. Exploded out of just a black culture thing. It became a dominant mainstream culture thing.
Right.
In a huge way.
Yeah.
But it wasn't there yet at all. In
But by the
85.
end of I can't remember what year Bone Thugs and Harmony.
That's 95.
Oh, that's
really.
way on up then. Well,
Yeah.
wait then. I'll
Yeah,
tell that
so
story in a
you're
second.
jumping ahead. I like that. Instead of like hanging in the background. So let's see. I went by an interesting thing too. I noticed about the 80s as compared to 75, comparing 95 and 75. You had hit singles by Wham, Tears for Fears, Duran Duran, Madonna,
Right. U2.
and yeah. But the big albums were by Wham, Tears for Fears, Duran Duran, and Madonna. So there was this overlap. You weren't a singles artist or an album artist anymore. You were both. There was a lot more of that because if you do divide out the singles and albums from the 75, it was very divergent. And there was a whole lot of overlap in 85.
Right. Well, at that time, the albums were still the things that were going to make you money.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, but and they were making money, and they were making money and all of those bands that I named were also huge MTV stars.
Right.
So you had MTV
So
fueling the
they
singles.
had to be photogenic, too.
Yeah.
Yes, and they were more photogenic for sure. I would say Madonna and Duran Duran and all that are a lot easier to look at than that crap you
Bachman
all
Turner
watching in
overdub.
75. Old frumpy guys and saggy jeans. Come on.
There's a reason why Bachman Turner Overdrive didn't make it in the MTV.
That's right. That's right. But it was all a matter of taste and style. And
Great band. Not knocking the band.
No,
Right.
They
No.
put out some great radio singles.
Yeah, ugly people make good music too. So that's something we know. And also 85, Purple Rain was number 1 for 21 weeks, and
Right.
it started in 84, carried over to 85.
And I have to say that I kind of resisted black music for a long time. I mean, I listened
Prince, like
Prince
all of
was-
them.
no,
The brand, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I just went for. In the 80s, I was listening to what they called college rock. I mean, it was
Okay.
jangly,
Did you feel-
REM-y, but it was Prince that
Right.
opened my eyes to. Because I love Purple Rain.
Well,
Just
but Prince
blew me away.
brought back. I mean, he brought back kick-ass guitar playing.
Yep.
He brought back, soul, and I mean, his influences were, Funkadelic and Sly and the Family Stone and some of these great 60s, 70s acts. So for those of us who grew up on that, Prince was like, oh, all right, I
Right.
can get into this again. Even
Right.
though he was very different, he still had all that stuff in his music.
Right. Well, I'm going to note both of those for future things
Right.
I want to talk about, what you both said just then. But also 85, you had soundtracks, were bigger deals, Beverly Hills Cop and Miami Vice. And you did have, in addition to all the new people, you did have Phil Collins and Dire Straits latched on and persevered into 85. So there were some that made the transition.
Right.
And they had big years in 85 and big albums also.
Yeah.
Still, there were bands
Yeah.
in the 80s.
Yeah, there were still. Yeah. Well, are we ready for the 90s yet? Do we want to just pop over to the 95? Because we had that's a huge difference right there, just 75 to 85.
Well, yeah. I mean,
You're starting to see in the 80s, you're seeing a lot more synthesizers, a lot more
Yep.
digital
Right.
recording, digital effects. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's good, and that's one of the things I wanted to say.
Oh,
is
yeah.
a lot of that stuff sounds more dated than the '70s stuff today.
Yeah.
Because they had the Lindrums,
Drum machines.
Yeah.
Well, right. Technology, improvements and everything.
but very primitive electronic stuff. I mean,
Right.
even though electronic music starts with before Kraftwerk even in the
Right.
'70s,
Right.
it became kind of a fad in the '80s, and everybody added little faddish sounds, and that's one of the reasons that it sounds just so dated.
Right.
Well, from a personal story, too. My father had given me for Christmas a beautiful classical guitar. It was immaculate. But I was starting to play in my first band, and if you didn't have a synthesizer, you just weren't a band. So I traded
Right.
that in for a
Right.
synthesizer.
Oh, my gosh.
And I don't even know what happened to that
No,
synthesizer.
you don't want to know
I
probably.
wish I had that guitar, though.
Well, one of the things that you brought up, too, about soundtracks becoming a big deal. Also, people were making, by the 80s, everybody was making mixtapes. So it was not like a situation where you just recorded one album on a cassette, though people did that.
Right.
But I think that's really the genesis of people being able to, say, okay, this song, this song, this song, this song, and cut out the
That's
other
the
stuff.
genesis for
Curate
Spotify
your own-
playlists.
Yeah,
Right.
curate your own playlist.
Yeah, you create...
Or a playlist to a person you're...
Every new element that added a DIY
Yeah.
experience for the consumers, took off.
But I think that's part of the reason the soundtrack albums became so popular is it wasn't the same thing. You
Right.
got like a collection of hits and non-hits.
Yeah.
But
And you had We Are the World. So
The Pretty,
it wasn't all good.
the Pretty in Pink soundtrack is fantastic.
Oh,
It
it's
turned me
terrific.
onto a lot of bands.
Yeah, we had a soundtrack episode, but yeah, Pretty in Pink, John Hughes movies in general.
oh yeah, they're all great.
Yeah. And also, by the way, CDs at this point had been out for a couple of years, and they were gaining traction
Right.
pretty fast.
In 85?
Yeah. I think the first CD was like 82, maybe. It wasn't. They weren't huge yet, but they were like, "Oh, this is new." And I remember guys, at record stores like, "These things are indestructible." I think they made them tougher then because they got more flimsy over time. But
Oh, they
those
did.
first ones
Well,
were just.
when you have to mass produce something
Yeah.
by the billions, you cut
Yeah.
corners.
But I remember distinctly this one guy owned his own record shop, and he was just showing me, and he just pulled one out and just like slammed it on the table and said, "You can't do that with a vinyl album." And it's like, okay.
Well, at the time, in fact, we had stores, like specialty stores, that just sold CDs.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was a big deal.
And
they were twice to three times the price of a vinyl album.
Yep, they were so expensive. And you did have cassettes. Cassettes were taken off with boom boxes.
Right.
So there was a lot more cassette.
Portability factor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And cassettes were way more portable than 8-tracks.
Right. And they became common in cars, too,
Yeah.
to have cassette players instead of an 8-track player, I guess.
And
Well, I was just having this discussion the other day, and I think in some ways the advent of the CD was a decline in the quality of albums because you
Yeah.
could fit 80-plus minutes
Yeah.
of music on there,
Yeah.
and just because you can doesn't mean you should.
No.
Right.
No.
And there was a lot of bands
There's a
that put out
lot
an
of-
album that if they just cut it down to 10 or 11
Yeah.
songs, it would have been a great album, but there's a whole bunch of other crap on
So many albums I reviewed that had 16 or 18 tracks that would have been awesome if they'd been 10 tracks.
speaking of Prince in the 90s.
Prince in the 90s. Yeah. Just everybody. I mean, just everybody.
Pretty
Like, why,
much.
we don't need this many songs from you, just do the good ones.
Yeah.
It's a curse. I mean, there's a lot of artists like that, like the guy from Guided by Voices, Robert Pollard.
Yeah.
I mean, he writes an album every week,
Well, same-
and you can't keep up.
Same thing with Ryan Adams.
Yep.
But it's like, if he had an editor, he would always be great. As he is, it's like this album will be okay. The next one will be like, why the hell did you make it?
Yeah.
Anyway,
All right.
keep going.
Let's go to 95, shall we? Okay, so 95, rock was just even further fractured, but it had some strong roots. It had college rock, and album rock and all that, or
And grunge.
alternative rock and grunge, and
Which killed hair metal.
Yep.
killed hair metal. Exactly.
Totally
So hair metal was dead.
Which was good riddance.
Yeah, no one needed, the one-piece suits and the,
Spandex.
bright red and, day-glow spandex and all that. So that was done. Although I don't know that grunge was so much better,
It was
it's
just
like
a different uniform.
unwashed hair
Yeah.
in 7 days.
And flannel
Yeah, and flannel.
shirt.
So much flannel and boots,
jeans with holes in them.
Yeah, yeah. So, trading off one bad style for another. But grunge and sometimes alt rock wasn't only grunge. It was kind of overlapping, but there was some other college rock type music that wasn't grunge.
Yeah.
And you had you had the Riot Girls and the Lilith Girls. They were all coming out, finally putting more women in the mix too.
Yeah, and you also had the punk turning into something else to some extent that wasn't grunge, even though grunge was really inspired by punk.
Right.
But it became something different.
Well, punk kind of became like a subset of a lot of hybrid genres, I think. And it merged in with electronica too. Because I was talking about the band Atari Teenage Riot recently, and they were very much punk, but also very electronic and just like explosive, kind of music.
Yep.
So you had all that hybrid stuff going on, and this is when you really had the hip hop dominance, just the surged power. You want to talk for a minute? Because I've
Yeah, well, I think that with hip hop, after grunge, rock didn't really have a foothold
right.
because hip hop and rap pretty much replaced it on the radio.
Right. And I can say that. I mean, in hip hop means R&B and rap. You know, so it's kind of like it includes rap, it includes R&B, and a lot of times they were fused together in some songs. And
But R&B had changed a lot by
yeah,
that
it
point.
wasn't the old 70s or R&B or anything like
No,
that.
and it was,
Much more polished and
right. So it had changed a whole lot. And the other thing that was going on, which you're probably not going to touch on, is country music.
Yes, I was.
You were.
Next on my list is Garth Brooks, who was kind of leading the way for a palatable, admirable type of country music, at first, and then it turned terrible.
Well, but what happened? I mean, and it started in the '80s when you got the New Traditionalists come out, and what Steve Earle always called the great songwriter scare of 1980s. But you had all these great artists with great songs, and you had a whole bunch of new writers in Nashville. And then when Garth Brooks comes along, he's still relying on a lot of these new artists or new writers, but he becomes such a big superstar that it's just like what happens with every big thing that happens. The industry just wants that.
Right.
We want another one of those.
Right, exactly. All the facsimiles were terrible. You
Right,
know, but
it
Garth
became-
Brooks himself was actually a really very talented man.
He's very talented, and it's not his fault.
No,
He
it's
didn't
not his
intend
fault
for it to happen.
what happened to country.
But that was
But he kicked
was
it
the
off.
harbinger of country music becoming, I think, just terrible.
Yeah.
And it
I
was,
agree, yeah.
And that's where alt country starts coming in.
Right.
With great artists that got there's like the old 97s come from that era. Of course, the V-Roys here from Knoxville come from that era, and we had all sorts of drive-by truckers basically come from alt country.
Uncle Tupelo.
Uncle Tupelo, which we can talk about later what happened with Uncle Tupelo.
Right.
But that's like there was a whole movement, which some people called it No Depression, some people called it alt country, and it kind of really got a toehold right at the end of the 90s.
So, and the important thing to realize here is that music is always changing
Right.
and flexing and expanding and shrinking and overlapping and fusing, and it's happened decade after decade after
Right.
decade, and it's going to keep happening, you know. So there's no reason to what.
No, I was just going to say I have one more point about the 90s.
Okay, well, I do too. I want to say that cassettes actually surged past vinyl sales, and then CDs surged past cassettes and vinyl sales.
Right.
So you had this like format shifting further and further away from vinyl, and more and more in favor of CDs,
Right.
and then cassettes were kind of in the middle, and it was cassettes were a lot of times like for me, I would buy blank cassettes, and then I would record off of a CD.
Well, and recordable CDs are what really put the nail in the coffin of cassettes.
Right.
Because
Because you could make a mix CD.
yeah, at that
could
point
make
you didn't need, and
Yeah.
there's another thing that's coming up too, where something like that happened in another decade. So,
Right.
and also, I did want to say, I know you got something else to say too, but I'll let you in just a minute.
I'm going to let you finish.
I'm going to let you finish. But
I just got a picture of you as Kanye and you as Taylor Swift.
Yeah, but I'm just standing there looking forward. No, so diversification. So we did have Garth Brooks. You still had like Michael Jackson, and you had R.
Right.
Kelly, but you had number one albums by Tupac and by Bone Thugs and Harmony
Right.
and by the Dog Pound. So you just suddenly you had hip hop artists had taken over and had number one albums, and you had. You had Mariah Carey, you had Madonna and stuff like that going on. But the biggest album of the year was Alanis Morissette, which is also very symbolic because you had, the Riot Girls and all that stuff, and you had like outspoken women who were part of the system, but also, like standing up. You had Janis Joplin and stuff like that going on, but you didn't have this kind of takeover effect that Alanis Morissette had. And she was just kind of a hot flame that blew for a couple of albums, I think, and then she went off again. But it was just a good time because there was so much going on, and you had different kinds of rock, and you had country reinventing itself, and you had hip-hop taking over, and you had all these women coming out,
Well,
too.
the Little Affair, is that in the next decade, or is that in the 90s? I can't
it's
remember when that
90s.
was. It was the 90s.
It was 90s, yeah.
Yeah, so you had a real movement for women to get their piece of music and celebrate their, the great female artists that
Right.
were out there. The Indigo Girls were huge here, and they're huge other places, but
Right.
in Knoxville they were particularly big.
Right.
And that was part of the impetus, I think, for so many young women to get out there and for the companies to sign them because they were actually making some money.
Right, and an interesting thing, we had in the '85 example I gave you, you had album and singles artists overlapping, and they were kind of like the same people on both charts.
Right.
Well, at this point, you had I named all the rap albums and others that were big. If you looked at the singles chart, you had two songs by TLC that were number one for 11 weeks together. You had a Madonna song number one for 7 weeks. You had Mariah Carey with 8 weeks, and Mariah Carey with Boys to Men that were number one for 16 weeks. You had 42 weeks of just those female artists who were number one. So, and that was with what was going on the album chart. So you had separation again, kind of like in the 70s.
Well, John
What were you going to say about
I
the
was just
90s?
going to say, my trend toward thinking about the technology of the time, that it was in the 90s when sampling really became a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at the Beastie Boys, Paul's Boutique. I mean, there's charts out there showing exactly which sample. I mean, that album is almost entirely samples.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, a lot of rap albums are.
yeah, I know,
you
and that's a big influence on rap,
Yeah,
was sampling.
yeah.
People would take old beats from Sly and the Family Stone or James Brown or
Yeah.
any number of old R&B artists and just take a sample and make a loop out of it.
And that's the trend that you still see today, and you
Sure.
see it on
Yeah.
social media. You see it in hip hop or TikTok videos and Instagram.
And De La Soul sampled the Turtles,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
and that became the first. There was a lawsuit over that because the Turtles sued them. That became the first time that someone had to pay to use a sample.
Okay.
And that sort of set a precedent.
Yeah.
Oh, didn't know
Yeah,
that.
they sampled "You Showed Me" off the 1968 album "Battle of the Bands" by the Turtles.
That's a great album.
It's a great album.
All right, we're not talking about 60s.
No, wait a minute. I wanted to say one thing about Bone Thugs and Harmony because this is
Okay.
I reviewed. I can't remember who all was on the bill. I think maybe Bobby Brown was on it. I think he may have been the headliner. But Bone Thugs and Harmony was one of the opening acts.
Okay.
And I'm sitting in this audience, and it's in Knoxville. Knoxville has a very small black population, but it was mostly a black audience at the arena. But behind me was like these guys wearing cat caps who looked like they came out of
the boonies,
the boonies.
outer counties, as we
Yeah.
call outlying counties.
yeah, and it was like, and I loved it when I was reviewing shows to look around and see the crowd and see,
Yeah.
these people I normally see. Is this a crowd I don't normally see?
Yeah.
So these guys are back there with their cat caps on and their
Yeah.
T-shirts and their jeans, and one of them looks at the other one and says, "I love me some Bone Thugs." It was like, okay, everything
Yeah.
has changed.
Yeah.
Well, there was kind of a bit of an anarchy and everything in rap music. And even though it was very, very entrenched in black culture mainly, and, you had the Beastie Boys. And
Right.
You had Vanilla Ice, another huge... No, but...
God.
There's sampling right there.
Yeah,
Yeah, no
yeah,
kidding.
exactly. But the culture, even if it wasn't your own culture, it still spoke to you,
Yeah.
as kind of a succeeding and overcoming and rebelling and all that stuff. So,
Yeah, and I mean, and it scared the hell out of your parents, which is
of course,
always
always a bonus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
The
always
element
want
that
to
you-
do that. Well, your parents scared their parents too.
Yeah.
It's cyclical.
It's just what people do.
Yeah, but that was always the thing, is watching the crowds at different shows and seeing who's turning out and who's not turning out.
Right.
And you saw more and more folks who drove pickup trucks and came out of the outer counties coming to those shows.
Outlying counties.
Yeah.
Sometimes outlying states.
Sometimes.
Maybe come down from the mountains of North Carolina or from
Yeah.
the coal mines of Kentucky or up from North Georgia and all that. Yeah. So
What was the singer from the Belgian techno band that was looking for men that
Lords
were
of
large,
Acid.
large and
Yes.
stupid?
She
Lady
was
Galore.
delivered many, many stupid shirtless men. Yes. It was a bonanza, a cornucopia of shirtless dumb men.
Stupid men.
Stupid,
Yes.
yeah. Well, I'm ready to pop on over to 2005.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Now, 2005, the century got off to a real shaky start because at the very beginning, you had the Y2K scare.
Right.
And if you weren't around before it happened, it was a very real fear that many people had. Maybe it was manufactured, but it was just like you legitimately didn't know if you could trust technology.
Well, then that was the thing, is because computers were not designed to go beyond
To click over
the
to
1900s.
Yeah, great, very, very design flaw right there. Yeah.
Even the people who designed computers didn't know what was going to happen.
No, they didn't. We had a lot of issues in the newsroom. It's like, well, we don't know what's going to happen
Yeah.
tonight. People were worried about their money in the banks,
Yeah.
and all that
And
stuff. was a
hospitals
fear.
going down and everything.
Hospitals, yeah. It's like we may just shut down and go back to the 1800s, something, But we got through it. But then the very next year, you had 9/11, which brought a whole new fear. We had never had an attack like that.
Right.
And it was just to see again, and it was a technological thing on one degree because you had so many planes were hijacked and just all the planes are grounded and everything. So that was bang, bang, back to back years at the beginning of the century. Meanwhile, in just music in general, MTV bailed on videos. This
Right.
was when MTV's like, we're not going to show videos anymore. We got alternate programming with, reality shows and Jackass and stuff like that. So they pulled out. So they weren't really influencing music anymore. You did have YouTube, but YouTube was just getting started
Right.
then, so it wasn't a big force yet, and it wasn't all integrated in your computers and your phones, and not everybody even had phones necessarily.
Well,
and-
yeah, there were no smartphones.
Right. There were no smartphones and stuff like that. So it was a very flux year because stuff had clicked around and was starting to change, but it was still moving forward with technology despite the scare of YTK,
UTK is kinda scary.
UTK, and all the other alphabets.
Right.
But that's also the advent of MP3s and
Yep.
Napster and,
And
illegal
iTunes.
downloads.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing that changed so much because
Yep.
at first it was the recordable CDs and everybody was mad about you could record a CD.
You remember the little label that used to come on the back of the album that said "Home Taping is Killing Music"?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But that was the thing with Napster. When Napster came in, and I'm sure you're about to talk about this, Chuck.
Well, I was going to just touch on like iTunes and iPads came in and they were changing.
iTunes didn't exist at that point.
Right. But it was like everything was about to happen, and
But like original MP3s, they sounded horrible.
Yeah.
They did, but you could get the music that you wanted
For free.
from somebody else. I mean, everyone's
Yep.
putting with
Yep.
file sharing, they were putting up banks with Napster of everything.
Yep.
You could get it. And sometimes it was stuff that was hard to get.
Yep.
Which was great for collectors like, us, but it was also the most popular album out there.
Yep.
Somebody could put
just
it up
get it
and,
for
and
free.
millions of
Here
people
it
would
is for
download
free,
it.
yeah. And what happened to the Napster guy in the trial? Did he? I know he went to trial, and there was a big.
Well, I think they had to. I mean, he had to start paying. But before you get to the trial, you've got people like. I mean, I don't know if you remember. I'm sure you remember Afro Man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because I Got High was his big song.
Right.
But he became a hit artist because of Napster, because of people sharing that song, and it gave him a career.
Right.
It was sucking money out of
Because
all
it
the
got high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was sucking money out of all the record companies,
Yep.
and they were not paying the artists for the stuff that was being downloaded. But it was also the democratization of music
Yep.
was also having an effect on independent artists being able to
Yeah,
come
because
in.
you could put yourself out there to everyone in the
Yeah.
world, and you didn't have to have a major label to sign you to do that.
Exactly.
Distribution model changed
Right.
a million times over.
Yeah.
So, and CD sales started to falter.
Yep.
So all that was happening together. Spotify launched a couple of years later, and YouTube was just getting started in 2005. But within a couple of years, they had like a big bank of music videos.
Right.
So you had all this free access, and you had there was a lot of change, a lot of flux going on there in terms of technology and distribution and all of that.
And the control that record companies had over
Yeah,
music.
again, record company control was shaken to the core.
And what do record companies do now?
Yeah. Well, they still get things distributed.
Well, if you got
and promoted.
Taylor Swift on your record company,
Well, I know, but those are the only kind
I
of
know
artists that
so
get
many
signed
exceptions. Yeah, it's
to the
it's
major
different.
labels. They
It's
don't want
different.
anything to do
Yeah.
with. I mean, a little indie band that
Nope.
might have. They're not
Right.
interested
Nope.
in making a small band go viral. They just want the big, huge.
They want
Rainmaker.
They want the
Right.
next Gen Z pop woman.
Yeah.
That's where all the money is at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
2025. This is where it is. But let's see what happens 10 years from now. But I don't want to get too far ahead of that.
But during that time, at the beginning of the 2000s, that was when, because of all this, that's when they started signing artists to what they call 360 deals, which means the record company gets a piece of everything the artist does.
Oh wow! Yeah.
And it started screwing over artists.
Yeah.
Because they'd have to give the record company back money from their T-shirt sales and
Yeah.
from whatever they had.
Which is crazy. I mean,
whatever
why?
merch they had.
Why would they be entitled to their
Right.
merch money?
Yeah. And it was...
That's just they had better lawyers.
Yeah, yeah.
They can afford the better lawyers. So some artist that's just trying to make some money is
Right.
going to sign away whatever, and then realize if they
They
make
got
it,
nothing. So
Yeah.
many of these people were on big labels. They had big hits, and they got hardly anything off of it. It's I would when people would talk to me back then during that time, I would always tell them, even though I'm not a huge Dave Matthews fan, look at the Dave Matthews Band because that's the model you want.
Right.
Because they sold 100,000 albums before they signed with BMG Records.
Okay.
So they could call the shots. They didn't have to sign a 360 deal.
Right.
Because the record company wanted them so bad
Right.
that they got a great deal.
Well,
and
that's
they
the
got
thing.
rich.
I mean, it's the old standard. Whoever wants it the most loses.
Yeah.
So you just, So anyway, that's
And you
just
got
a
to
rule
put
of
in the
thumb.
legwork on the front end
Yeah.
Right.
to get that kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And
if you're 18 and someone sees promise in you, and you think, "Ooh, I could buy a car," not realizing that you could buy 4 or 5 houses too with what you're about to make, you're going to fall for it.
Yeah. And in a way, it started going back to the model that was in the 50s because the artists then started making more money off their live performances than off their records because they were getting such a tiny slice of the money that came in from the records. They were all like too ignorant to know, I shouldn't sign this contract because I'm just going to get pennies while they're getting dollars at the record company.
Right. Well, just real quick, the types of music, hip hop still just had everything. The top albums, you had 50 Cent, you had a Tupac posthumous release, you had Eminem, you had The Game, you had Kanye West popping in there. And in country, you had Kenny Chesney, your friend Kenny Chesney, George Strait, not a bad country, Faith Hill, Gretchen Wilson. So you had some big
some good stuff
country people who crossed over. And then you still had Madonna, Mariah Carey, to 9 Inch Nails, System of a Down. So you still had a pretty healthy mix.
And kind of bubbling under that, you also had Radiohead.
Yeah.
And you had, and this is
Beck.
Beck, another good one.
Yeah.
And then you had Wilco, which came from the ashes of Uncle Tupelo.
And Sun Volt.
Right. And Sun Volt came out of there too. And you and I talked about when Yankee Hotel Foxtrot came out in 2001, you were comparing it to Radiohead. So there was something different going on there, kind of underground.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about that album is the record company said, we don't want this.
Right.
Because they were on Warner Brothers Records or one of them.
Right.
And then I think maybe they've been on Reprise. One of the Warner companies. Yeah, well, and then Wilco releases the album for free online digitally and gets out of their contract with Warner and then signs another one with another subsidiary of Warner, None Such, and has the biggest hit of their career. And it's all because that they released it digitally,
Right.
Beyond what the record company wanted.
Right.
And, took control.
If you get ahead of the trends,
Yeah, and that's what they did.
You're going to win.
Well, and Radiohead did the same thing.
In Rainbows.
At least in Rainbows.
Yeah.
It was just like, pay whatever you want.
Yeah.
Right.
And there is some validity to that model, I think, because, sure, you're going to have probably a huge percentage of people that are going to download it and listen to it for free and just not even think about paying for it.
Right.
But I think there are some people that really want to pay for it.
Yeah.
People, it's art, and people don't want to just steal art. A lot of people do, but a lot of people are just like, this is art. This is something someone's done that's special, and I want them to make a living from it.
Yeah,
Well, and somehow the Spotifys and iTunes and all the streaming services in present day have figured out how to turn that upside down.
Yeah.
And you can't make a living
No.
Yeah.
selling your music.
Well, let's go on to 2015 because if we can. So this is 10 years ago. Oh, did you have something else to say about 2000? Okay.
No, I'm just looking over. I wrote a few things down at the beginning.
So now we're in full steam ahead for Spotify, for YouTube. iTunes was starting to get jacked around with. Okay. iTunes is starting to get jacked around with by Apple, which was going into Apple Music. And I don't know about everybody else, but I lost a lot of things that I was downloading from iTunes and had access problems and just got so frustrated because I was trying to back it up. And I had a CD player, and I wished that I had just bought everything on CD
Right.
and then burned it to new CDs or whatever, and just hadn't gone with this whole digital model of having it stored away somewhere that suddenly you've got to pay for it. I don't know. It was just a mess for
See,
me.
I never got on board with that.
Oh.
Well, and the idea of having a record collection or a music collection is lost on the youth of
Yeah.
today. I mean, it's like, well, why would you
Yeah.
take up the space and the...
By the same token, there's the backlash of the kids who are getting into vinyl again.
Right.
And though it's extraordinarily expensive to get a vinyl collection of that's decent quality, there's a backlash to the length of just listening to a single and some favorite stuff. I mean, the kids that I've talked to way back, when the vinyl thing started happening again, was like they wanted to be forced to listen to the whole side of an album. So there's a backlash to the people want longer things.
Right.
A lot of them.
Well, and there's also sort of the just contrarian punk attitude, because there's like bands putting out albums on cassette now.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's like, this is just
yeah.
stupid.
There's always going to be something like that going on. Yeah. CD sales were in free fall by
Right.
2015, so that was kind of a not really death knell, but like really bad.
Yeah.
Bad news. Again, there was an interesting trend that happened that I think kind of put the hurt on some of the R&B, is that the three biggest black icons in music, Prince, Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, they all died within a couple of years. And they were all kind of young to be dying. Michael Jackson was 50, Whitney Houston was 46, I think, 47, and Prince was 57. And it was all like I guess drug or alcohol related type stuff. But that was just like a real blow to just have death after death after death, from just
Right.
the three biggest, I think, black icons of music in the 80s, to just all go like that was kind of heartbreaking. I don't know that it affected, trends in music or anything, but albums, the big albums, this was 2015, you had Kendrick Lamar, Drake, The Weeknd, you had little Justin Bieber to Muse to Mumford & Sons to One Direction, the British boy band. So again, you had a healthy mix of stuff going
Right.
on. It was a little bit hard to get a clear picture on what was changing so much in 2015, other than just the complete DIY, Spotify, not paying for music anymore kind of takeover, and CDs just kind of falling off the planet.
Yeah, I don't know.
We don't need to talk any more about it
Well,
because
I'm
we're
just-
we're going to run out of time and not even get to looking at the future.
Oh well, we'll do that. I just think that by that point, everything was online. Everybody started putting stuff in the cloud, which I don't put the things in the cloud because, like you said, you lose stuff. I don't know how many people have told me they've lost their music.
Yeah.
Because
I know
it
so
was
many
in the
people who
cloud.
lost stuff on, and you probably didn't because you may be more technologically savvy than I.
Well, it's weird because, I've been a collector since, like I said, since I was 12 years old. But somehow once I have gotten into this, I listen to streaming service for my music, and you can dial up anything.
Yeah, you don't have to download anything. You can just go on Spotify and listen to it. And I think that's changed how I feel. Like as far as the iTunes thing, that was kind of out of sight, out of mind. If you have a rack of albums or of CDs, and they're there and they remind you that you want them and everything, I would download stuff and forget I downloaded it on iTunes, and then go back and think, oh, I can't get it now, and I paid for it. And I don't even have a CD copy, so it just felt like a big ripoff.
Yeah.
You just bought some vapor, and it's
I just
gone.
bought some vapor that I can't even get to now. So I don't. I pretty much punted the iTunes system.
Right.
I remember reading an interview with Neil Young back when I was working at the record store in the early 90s,
Right.
when he said, in the future, the music's going to be worthless. It's the packaging that people will pay for. And I
Right.
remember thinking that was absurd, and
Right.
now it's
He was
absolutely
right.
the truth.
Right.
People want a big coffee table book, and they just listen to the music. The music's just, I can stream that. I want the
Right.
pictures. I want
Yeah.
Right. All right. Well, I'm going to go on to 2024. Can't do 2025 yet. Obviously, can't recap that year. What's that? So 2024. Interesting, terrible thing we had this time was the pandemic of 2020, which put the hurt on live performance.
Right.
And that just put everyone on the skids. And it was just hard to even launch new music. That's when Chapel Roan should have broke. Her first album or her big breakthrough was going to come in April of 2020. And, wrong time, and it flopped out. So it took her years to get her footing back. And let's see. We had and we even in 2024 we were still having a lot of concert cancellations and festival cancellations. Yeah. A lot of it they were calling unforeseen circumstances, but a lot of that was just low ticket sales.
Yeah, the unforeseen circumstance of nobody's going to buy.
I didn't expect no one to buy tickets for my show.
Man, music festivals have just exploded.
Yeah. Well, some of them were canceling though.
Yeah, but I mean, I think they reached their logical limit and tried to go beyond. I think there's also a lot of players that think that putting on a music festival is easy.
Right.
And then they try and do it and realize that's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah. So we had that going on. An interesting thing that you guys won't care about, but the whole vocal bands, like the Backstreet Boys, Spice Girls, In Vogue, all that stuff, that has shifted in an awesome way to K-pop and to pop from mostly East Asia, like Japan and these other countries. And what's so great about it is they've taken the formula, that British American formula of you get, 4 or 5 boys or girls or mix or 9 or whatever, and you give them individual personalities and everything. And they started doing that. And there's never been there have been different types of thrusts to bring in inclusion, with black artists, people of color, with Latino artists, other ethnicities and everything. But there's never really been any kind of push that I can recall to cover the Asian markets, to cover Asian Americans and all that. And this one just brought it in, it just brought it in, starting young too, because that's the fans of this. Yeah. So we get a lot of alpha kids and maybe some, younger Gen Zs. Because these bands, they will go back and forth between English and Korean or English and Japanese. So they're being exposed to a culture that's never really been pandered to in America. And they just came in the front door and they just took over this whole... And they're building with the youngest of audiences, too, because this tends to be a really young group of people. So I think that's been an interesting twist. And you're not seeing as many American and British vocal bands now because they know how to do it. And you can even go, like at Target, they'll have one display of albums and whatever, vinyl and some CDs or whatever, of Taylor Swift and some others. There's always like a second display that's just all K-pop, J-pop, all this Asian pop. So it's like such a big phenomenon that most adults still aren't really that aware of unless they have children. So they're getting in right, too. You're getting in to the beginning.
You get an audience that's young, they'll buy your stuff forever.
Yeah. But also, Korea is like the Asian country that is probably the most, from my understanding, the most like the United States.
Probably, that makes sense.
Tastes and culture and things go.
And a lot of these K-pop bands have, they might have 1 or 2 Japanese or Filipinos or whatever in the group. It's not strictly Korean. And, they do mix it up and they rap and they sing. And it's all the old formats for how Americans and Brits were doing it all the time. So anyway, and then another thing that we've not really talked about, but hip-hop has been plateaued. And it's actually dropping some. Right. And I have a lot of theories on what's going on there because, it dominated. And I have several different theories about why it would be plateaued and why it would be dropping off. And I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but something you brought up, John, was about, you didn't feel like you should listen to black music until Prince came along and changed your mind on everything. But hip-hop has, it's done some expansion. From the beginning, it was black men dominated. Right. Not women, not other cultures. It was very, very black male dominated art form. And you had like the Beastie Boys, you had Eminem, who'd creep in. You had the Missy Elliott. So, and they have picked up a few more women performers like Megan Thee Stallion and Doja Cat and all that. But there's never really been much white integration into it. And maybe there shouldn't be, because, and I think it's an awkward position for people to be in, but, if you're a hip hop fan, because it's like, it is very cultural based. And if you do water it down, dilute it with all this different cultures, what is it, what does it become? Right. But at the same time, they embrace a wide audience to an extent, but one of the key things is you have to, like Gen X and some older millennials, they're like, yes, this is Black culture, and I love it, and I love this music, and I understand it's Black culture, and it's not supposed to be about me or anything. But you do that whole representation thing that makes you want to add, more women and more Latinos and more Black artists and all that stuff. It might be kind of working against hip hop. So I don't know how to feel about it, because it's kind of like if you're a white kid, you're said, okay, you can enjoy hip hop, but you're not part of our culture. And the kids, they want to be part of that culture, but they can't. Obviously they can't sing along, if they hit the N-word or something like that. So that's a constant reminder that you're not part of this culture. You can appreciate it, but we're not going to make you a part of it. And one thing about music is you do need connection. Yeah. So I think it was fine in the beginning, but I think what we're seeing, and I'm not sure about this, but I think what we're seeing is that Gen Z is finally like, I'm a 16-year-old white girl in suburbia. What on earth is Kanye West going to tell me that I want to hear? Because it's not only have they not brought many women into it, I don't think there are hardly any white women in it, and they're not bringing in young people. They're not celebrating new rap stars the way they used to. They are still talking about the most talked about rappers of the year were Jay-Z or hip hop artists, Jay-Z, Eminem, Beyonce, who's a singer but still part of hip hop, Kendrick Lamar, Kanye West, Drake, all these same people. Yeah. Eminem and Jay-Z are in their 50s now. Beyonce, Kanye are in their 40s, and even the young ones like Kendrick and Drake, they're in their late 30s now. Yeah. So how is that going to relate to these Gen Z people?
Well, but
should they bother? Should they worry about it? I mean, should they say, we want to keep this culturally relevant and not pure? I don't want to use that word, but we want to keep it well grounded in integrity and not just like have just everybody from all cultures and all walks of life being part of this cultural phenomenon.
Well, I just think to some extent it's run its course, and it's always going to be a part of everything, but the dominance is run its course. I mean, I remember when dubstep came along, and I didn't get dubstep. Yeah, it was like, where the hell did this come from? And it's like, I thought, and nobody agreed with me, I thought it was because kids listened to video games, and that's where they were getting half their music, and that's what it sounded like to me. It sounded like something should be in a video game. And that became a big thing for probably 5 years.
Right.
Maybe.
Well, no, hip hop has been a lot longer.
No, hip hop has. I'm talking about dubstep.
Right.
Dubstep became this thing for about 5 years, and everybody was talking about it, and Skrillex was all over the place, and then it ran its course.
Right.
And they had to find need to find something else.
Well, I think hip hop hasn't run its course. It's not like just died or anything, but it plateaued when you didn't think it would plateau, and it started falling back. And I think it's falling back because younger people aren't jumping in. And the reason they're not jumping in, I do think if they at least celebrated more younger artists, and there are new hip-hop artists all the time, but I'm just saying you see all the publicity is just about these same guys. But
exactly, that's exactly what happened with rock and roll.
Right.
And we're talking about the 70s with punk and disco and everything coming in. It was a reaction to this dominance of this one kind of music, and there was a group of people who didn't really relate to it. And that was, punk and MTV and everything else that came in, it was a reaction to that. And it was young people trying to find what their thing was, and they probably haven't found that yet.
Right.
And it's so diversified now. There's so many different choices.
And so many choices available.
Right.
It's like information's coming at you from every single possible direction.
Yeah, and you can find anything out there. I don't hear as much adventurousness as I would like to hear with people going out and finding, international music. The K-pop thing, even though that's not for me, it's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a great thing.
That you're going out and finding this stuff.
Yeah. And just imagine, your kid learning Korean. That was never even conceived or assumed. But that's so awesome. But I also say that the hip hop thing, like 10 years ago, if you had a pop singer, like a female pop singer, Selena Gomez or Ariana Grande or whatever, you would almost always throw in a rap guest singer on every track.
And they were doing that in country music.
But they're not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
It's like you look at, Olivia Rodrigo and Chappell Roan and Sabrina Carpenter and all that stuff. They're not doing that now.
Well, the novelty of it is completely
The novelty of it is coming, and it's getting more and more isolated, like I say, from these young women. These Gen Z women are like on a different, just like in a different realm now.
Yeah.
And
even some people that call themselves rappers aren't rapping.
right.
We saw Chance the Rapper at Bonnaroo, and our joke was, when's he going to rap?
Right. They can sing. That's the thing, people. It's like they really can sing.
Why do you call yourself Chance the Rapper?
Yeah,
really.
I know. But, it's like probably
be Chance
better
the Singer.
branding to say Chance the Rapper, but people say, oh, they only rap because they can't sing. It's like, no. I mean, if they're good at rapping, then chances are they're going to be good at singing because they understand, the dynamics of how music works, Now the bad ones don't, but that's, they're bad singers too.
Well, what do you think the future is? What do you think?
Well, I just want to say,
okay.
The last thing I want to talk about, of course, is women, and it's about the change of women. What? Well, this has to come up because there's the rock people that dominated in the 70s, nowhere close to the way women are dominating music now. Album sales and singles. I mean, it's led by the queen of all, Taylor Swift, who's now kind of the elder stateswoman. She's like mid-30s, so she's a millennial. Mm-hmm. But all the ones that are popping up now are Gen Zs, and they're all like mid-20s or younger, early 20s. And it's the ones I talked about, Olivia Rodrigo and Sabrina Carpenter and Billie Eilish and Tate McRae and I don't know, I'm missing somebody there, but and what's so great is they are all so distinguishable between each other. And in the past, when you would package a Britney and a Christina Aguilera and all that, you would know Britney a little bit, but you couldn't really tell them that much apart. And these women have very distinct, well-rounded personalities, which I think is helping sell them because they're easier to identify with and they're easier for their group to identify with. But the downside of this is like, where are the guys going? Because the guys, it's like I looked up a couple, like Noah Kahan and what's his name, Benson. I want to call him Benson Burner, and I know that's not his last name. Benson Boone. They're kind of in folksy. So the guys that are coming up now, they kind of have a folksy twist more than anything else, which is interesting, but I don't know if people are going to identify with that. But and I do want to say that there's still a problem with women aging out. Katy Perry was going to have her huge comeback this year, and it was the biggest flop of the year. I think she's like 40, and nobody wanted a sexy Katy Perry to come back into the scene, and it's just because she's aged out, and that's I think that Taylor Swift is probably doing it right because she's not being sexy. She'd be cute. Sex kitten kind of thing, maybe, but
she's still sexy.
Yeah, but she's not, just putting it all out there, which does
has.
Become unseemly, I think, as you get older. But if you're just age appropriate attractiveness, which Taylor Swift is, then you can milk that a lot longer. So, but anyway, so now looking forward here at the very end of the show. I said this before, artists will always make art and people will always buy art and things will work out to some degree. One of my, and the unexpected things, we can't predict a pandemic. We can't predict the 9/11. We don't want to, we can't predict kind of things that will have massive changing circumstances for everybody. But, so things will change, technology will change. But with the sales down and the touring going down, I'm hoping, my dream is that they find a way to monetize even like smaller revenue streams. So you can monetize, YouTube, and you can get subscriptions to your TikTok or whatever, and you can sell from that. I just hate to think that music is getting so inaccessible for wannabe musicians that they can spend 60 hours a week working on it and make $11, you know? And I hate to think of people having to do 2 jobs, which will negatively impact making music. And I hate to think of people just not going into it because, like, well, I can't make any money on that, so I'm just going to go, you know, work at Target.
The biggest threat, though, I think, is going to be AI.
Yes, I was going to get into that. Yes, definitely.
But the biggest threat to that is assuming what people want and letting people tailor things to be exactly what they want, because you don't know what you want until you hear something different. You don't know that you want it.
It's going to homogenize.
Exactly, and it's
a lot of music.
I complain so much about country music, but it's the songs are music by committee. A bunch of songwriters get together and they take these elements and this worked before. People like this, people like that, and we put it all together. And AI can do that. I think AI will actually make country music better.
Wait, you could tell AI, you could say, I want a duet between Sabrina Carpenter and Elvis Presley, where they sing about breaking up and getting back together, a mid-tempo song, and it'll produce that.
I know. And it's close. I mean, I've heard the most effective ones I've heard done are like people making crazy 60s R&B bands with, you know, horrible, funny, nasty lyrics, and you can listen to some of those and think, because they put they make it sound like that era's recording.
Yes.
And it's like, this is pretty good.
But isn't that scary to think?
It is terrifying.
Because then who's even going to want to listen to your stupid idea if I can just come up with my own?
But that's when I've always bring Tom Waits up as the best example, is whoever thought they wanted to hear Tom Waits the first time they heard it.
Right.
And then the third time you hear him, it's like, I can't live without this.
Right.
Because it's great, but it's different. It's like, I mean, it's like AI is like telling a toddler, well, you can eat anything you want, and all they eat is candy.
Yeah.
And that's what our art is, I'm afraid, is going to turn into. That's what it can be.
And the problem with, you can do regulations to keep them from, you know, stealing Sabrina Carpenter's voice and Elvis Presley, you know, but the regulators are just so far behind everything, and they are always, you know, everybody who's creating this type of technology is 10 steps ahead. Yeah. And, you know, regulators don't even understand what the problem is, and by the time they do, you know, we've moved to 5 generations beyond that. So.
And the thing about art is, I mean, it's so important to us. We talked about that in one of the last episodes, and it's been going on since, I mean, people making paintings in caves. There's a reason we're telling stories and relating things, and it's important for us. I mean, soul is not a word that I would use particularly, but it's like, there's something inside us that needs that.
That's the connection.
Right. Yeah. And once AI just starts giving you what you want, I don't think people are going to connect the same way. Yeah. It's going to get boring.
We're going to all go into our own bubbles.
Exactly.
And who's going to suffer other than, you know, the artists and the people who could discover art.
And eventually there'll be a backlash to it.
Yeah, there will.
But that's been the theme of this whole conversation, is that music, as it evolves, is constantly reacting to trends.
Right.
And that's why punk music came out, because it was a reaction to the dinosaurs of rock. And that's why, you know.
And I got a positive note on all this, okay? It's like, what I like about Gen Z people, and I've been observing this generation for a while now, is they do have some respect for nostalgia, and they do like things from the past.
Right.
And they will borrow from it, but they're going to make it their own. Okay? So I can see rock and roll rebounding, but it won't be all the women just take a seat and watch these white men perform for you. There'll be inclusion, you know, and it may not just be the guitar, drum, bass, you know, but the basic element and the soul of rock can live on, you know, with a more diverse performing and maybe a change up of instruments, but the basic, you know, crux of it will carry on
if they have an audience, and that
if
is
they
the
have
problem.
an audience, and they'll find an audience. You know,
I hope
same thing.
They will.
I think the women. You know, I think the boys who are just kind of floundering, I think they're going to find a way. I think hip hop is going to find a way to move forward and move into a future without corrupting, you know, its core, and find a new audience. I think all of this stuff, just because Gen Z people, they just seem to kind of want to put in the work to make. They seem to be, and I'm just extremely generalizing here, but they do seem to be more artistic, and they do seem to be willing to, kind of make things work, and they want to make it their own. They don't want to just, have a new Led Zeppelin or crap like that.
Well, I do see more young artists on a local level trying to make good music and trying to do something.
Not just young white guys doing rock, right?
No, I mean everybody. No, and that's not. I mean, look. I mean, I was listening to soul in the '60s.
Right.
It began to lose
that's
me.
just it. I think that the connection that we all need will be there, and that Gen Z will find a way to connect to it themselves, and they'll find a way to connect and bring others into the connection process as well. Now, I don't know what those alpha kids are going to do when they come along. They'll probably ruin everything.
Well, I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a very dark period for a while, because I think you're going to have young people who know the technology and can create what they want, and I think it's going to be boring for a while. I think that if they can get everything, if they can write it in, this is what I want, then they get it, and they think that's what they want. Mm-hmm. But
trial and error, I mean, let them have their second, third albums.
I'm just talking about the listeners. I'm not talking about the artists.
Yeah.
I mean,
what they want is connection. If they find a way to deliver that to them, they'll appreciate it. I think a lot of times, like for me with music, I don't go in expecting anything, but I want to feel something when I hear it. So I won't go in with it's got to have this, this, and this, but then it gives me what I want, maybe that I didn't expect.
But this is the first time in history that you've been able to, or will be able to, put in exactly what you want, and it's going to spit it back out at you.
I agree with you. I'm just trying to find a positive thing.
Well, I hope. I mean, I do
talking
think
about but
eventually that will happen.
I said my biggest fear is AI and that kind of technology, and people just individualizing everything to where we really are just in bubbles.
Well, and the market is going to be so flooded with people giving people exactly what they think they want.
And already it's so hard to know what's out there. I mean, the market's already kind of flooded because it's just people making music in their bedrooms, and putting a video on TikTok, and boy, that one took off and no one knew who it was, and then you never heard from them again. Well, maybe it's just the optimistic. I feel like things will work out. It won't be what we expect, and we're not going to be able to predict it. But I just think at the very basic of it, like I say, artists make art, and people will pay for art.
I hope.
And again, my dream is to have. We're not going to have huge stars, tons of huge stars anymore. You'll get a Taylor Swift or whatever. But my dream would be for musicians to be able to just do music for a living, 40 hours a week or whatever, and at least make like a middle class income. They can buy a car, and they can, afford rent, maybe buy a house if they get the right market, and just, make a living. They don't have to make billions of dollars or anything like that.
I think that's the goal of most artists,
right.
But I think it becomes increasingly unattainable.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I do think there are opportunities, like small level opportunities for some revenue streams, not giant revenue streams, where they can sell stuff themselves and they can monitor it, and they can charge like a flat, with streaming and everything. You give people $5 a month, to stream for them exclusively or whatever.
Well, yeah, but it's not. That's really not worked so far. I mean,
oh my God, you're the cynic, and I'm
totally cynic.
Oh wow,
but I mean, many people have tried that, and I think it works for a while.
Right.
I mean, the Patreon stuff. I mean, people will support an artist for a little while.
Right.
But it's generally not enough for them to actually make a living.
Right.
And it's
like
even
I say,
less so.
I mean, it used to be kind of all or nothing, though. I mean, you would get into music and you'd either make it or you would just like have that second job.
But people found ways to make it work. I mean, it was for a long time, and it's still kind of the case. You get your song on a TV show or a movie or in a video game, you're making money off that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But when the movies and the TV shows start saying, "Oh, well, we want a peppy song that sounds sort of like Taylor Swift," but and then they type it in and it comes out and it's just background music for the most part.
Yeah, we don't need you anymore.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. So that's going to screw a lot of songwriters and a lot of other artists.
Well,
I think it will. I think there will be something that comes. It's just like newspapers. I mean, I think newspapers will eventually come back.
Really?
Yeah, I think
You mean printed newspapers?
No, I mean newspapers. As far as
Like
there
online,
may be
yeah.
there may be printed ones that come back in a radical way, but it's people have
Well,
to realize
I think
they have to
once
pay
you
for
realize,
things.
once you get past thinking that every single newspaper is, I mean, how many media conspiracies have we heard? People talking to me about, oh, the media is doing this and the media is doing that. It's like, dude, I was like, a regional deputy director,
Right.
for the biggest communication firm. No one ever told me we're going to do this and you got to do that. And
Yeah.
you've got to run this story. And they really are trying to do it the right way. And so it's like when people who are intelligent and educated and everything say, oh, well, the media is just churning that out and they're just making this stuff up. Maybe some media is, but it's like, God, there are too many working journalists in there who are just, there aren't enough people coming out from media saying, we were paid to do that. We were paid to go do a hit piece on that person. Or,
No, but now you have so many things that masquerade as newspapers and people
Yeah.
who masquerade
Well,
as
exactly.
journalists who are paid to put out a
Well,
bunch of crap.
that's what we were talking about with music journalism. It's
Yeah.
like now so many just bloggers and people who are paid by the artist to give good reviews,
Yeah.
and it's just like, ugh.
Yeah, but it's the same sort of thing. I mean, music, and we watched how music and newspapers were changed by digital sources.
Yeah,
and
we did.
and they basically both got screwed. Newspapers worse than music because newspapers were more stubborn and stupid,
Right.
even than the music business was.
Right.
But I mean, I do think things will.
But just to clarify to everybody who doesn't know this, there aren't dark overlords at the top of every media corporation sending down notes of
No.
we're going to do all hit pieces on
Other
this
than Fox
person.
News.
Well,
I'm sorry. I mean, we have.
But you know what I'm
records of
saying?
them
It's like,
doing that.
something like, I mean, credit to Gannett. I mean, they really did like, we're going to turn over your editorial. If you want to have editorials, have them. If you don't have them.
Right.
And you endorse whoever is right for your community and what you think is right. Just handing it over to individual editors and stuff like that. You've just got to take the high road and hope for the best.
But the people who want to sow chaos want you to doubt everything
They
and
do.
not have anyone you can trust.
And
so
you
they
just
can
you
say,
just have to be smart enough to see that, and some people aren't, and we just have to live with those people.
Yeah, well, that's what the digital age has given us.
Yeah, but anyway, we're going off topic
Yes.
of a long topic. But my bottom line here is like all these changes that happened from decade to decade were mostly unpredictable. There were some you were knowing there would be a backlash and everything,
Right.
but that makes me feel like people are going to find a way, and it's going to be hard, and there will be things that won't work out and things that unfortunately will fail, but they're going to keep finding a way, and we'll just see what happens. We'll see what happens 10 years from now when we're doing our next episode on that. Okay. Whoa, boy. Well,
Oh yeah. Okay.
we got to make some quick recommendations here.
Okay,
We've been
all right.
babbling.
It's a big topic.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, you chose a big topic.
Yeah,
Chuck.
let's talk about all
hell?
of music and everything that could happen. I'll go ahead first. How we saw it. I'm going to jump over to movies, which of course is the parallel to how we heard it. And I'm just going to recommend this movie, Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves from 2023. It was interesting because it was going to be like this big breakthrough movie, just this giant Dungeons and Dragons based movie, a fantasy adventure, and blah blah blah. And I think it kept sending wrong signals with the trailer, which was kind of goofy and weird. The cast was odd. It was Chris Pine and Michelle Rodriguez and Hugh Grant were like the three main stars. Not three people you'd necessarily see in a movie together. And it was one of those, I went to see it. It was just one of those times when it was like, I had time to see a movie. I just went right to the theater and just walked into it, knowing I don't know Dungeons and Dragons, and I would probably miss all the references. You don't have to know Dungeons and Dragons. It was charming. It was funny. It had adventure. It was unexpectedly funny. It kind of delivered on all fronts, and it just kind of got lost in the mix. Huh. But I definitely recommend it. It's very diverting and funny, and I don't know, it did have adventure and action and stuff like that, but it wasn't just like all caught up in like the like the Lord of the Rings or whatever, where all these mysterious things and plots you can't follow and all that. It was very straightforward, and Chris Pine was hilarious.
Huh. Well, I'm going to recommend a documentary from 2015 called The Nightmare. which is about sleep paralysis,
Oh.
which I have, and
Oh,
that's
I
the
didn't
reason
know
I
that.
watched it. Yeah, well,
Yikes.
it was a couple of weeks ago. I had to have my girlfriend shake me awake because, when you have sleep paralysis, you can't move and you can't verbalize.
Oh, God.
And you imagine something horrible is about to happen,
Yeah.
and you have to do it.
I've had some of that.
Yeah,
think
well, I
so.
finally
Yeah.
got Sarah to shake me awake. I finally said, "Shake me awake!" And
Wow.
as soon as I did, as soon as she shook me awake, because I thought there was like somebody in the kitchen and the dog was in there, like attacking somebody in the kitchen. But as soon as I did that, I heard a woman laughing behind her,
Oh, wow.
which is like, oh shit.
Wow.
And anyway, so I thought these were called night
Was she in the
terrors.
room?
Well, I freaked Sarah out because it's like, how's that old lady doing in there? But it turns out,
Is she in the room now?
Is she in the room now? Can you see her now?
no,
Okay.
no, and it only happens during that. But anyway, this documentary, basically, it has a little information, like peppered in with it, but mostly it's just people telling about their sleep paralysis nightmares and how it's so common. All these elements. There's the old hag, which is what I heard laughing behind Sarah
Wow.
that
Okay.
night. There are the shadow people, which is people that you can't really see their faces or
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
And it's common all over the world.
Oh, wow.
And it's like
It's a
many-
documentary?
It's a documentary, and what they reenact people's dreams.
What was it? Dangerous Nightmare? What?
It's just called The Nightmare.
The Nightmare. Okay.
And
Where do you see this?
I rented it on Amazon Prime, and I think it's out there all over the place. It's pretty easy to find. But it's an interesting documentary, and if you have this, it's wild to see so many similarities, and they go all over the world. Everybody has it.
Cool.
John, you got one?
I've been on vacation this whole week, and I
All
didn't
right.
watch anything visual except for
Okay.
the sunset.
Oh, well, that sounds good.
Excellent.
I recommend a nice sunset.
Okay, recommend a nice sunset. Is it also a musical sunset, or do you have a musical recommendation?
I
or-
do have a musical
Okay.
recommendation.
Okay, all right.
It is called Cunningham Bird, and it's Andrew Bird and Madison Cunningham,
Oh, okay.
and they are reproducing the Buckingham Nicks album
Oh,
in their own style.
oh, cool.
It's really interesting, and that I don't know if you know that Buckingham Nicks album, but it's
Great
fantastic.
album.
And it's Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks before they joined Fleetwood Mac.
Right.
Yeah. And it was so funny because that they toured on that album. They toured through Knoxville in the Southeast, and they got a following on that album, but they didn't get it anyplace else.
Oh, really?
And that album just disappeared. But I remember when they came through here, and it was a big deal. They were promoting it, and it's like, I saw the album. It's like, who's this girly-looking guy with his, naked with this cute girl? So, but yeah.
So it's Cunningham Bird.
Well, I'll check that out.
Wayne, you got a music
Just released.
recommendation.
Well, because of the topic, and when we talked about alt country and the schism between commercial country and alternative country, I want to recommend two albums. Southeastern by Jason Isbell, which is kind of his breakthrough when he got sober, and in a rare act, getting sober made him even better.
Oh,
So much
okay.
of the time when people get sober, their music
You don't
suffers.
want to hear them anymore.
Yeah, but no, he like John Hyatt, his music got that much better when he got sober, which is great.
Yeah.
But it's it's got some heartbreaking stuff on it. It's just terrific, and it's what everybody who knows Jason Isbell, that's the reason probably they know him. He was in the Drive-By Truckers. He released some stuff later. What are you laughing about?
I feel like Drive-By Truckers comes up at least twice every episode.
The last time it
Is
was
it-
John who brought him up.
But
They're-
it was
they're a
brought up
great band.
earlier today. Even,
I brought
wasn't
him
it?
up earlier
Oh,
today.
okay.
We were
yeah.
talking about alt country.
Okay.
Yeah, but so Jason Isbell had been a writer in that. They threw him out because of his alcoholism.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, when I talked to him,
Yeah.
I said, well, I was surprised when you left the Drive-By Truckers. And he said, so was I.
But even notwithstanding that, in that band to have those three songwriters, there's not enough room in a band for that many songwriters.
Well, man, I'll tell you though, while he was with them, their albums were the best they ever made. They were great. Dirty South, I'm sorry, that was one of the great albums of the
Well, I'm stuck on Southern Rock. Opera.
Southern Rock Opera.
And I think he may be on a song or two on that.
And I don't
Yeah,
have a
yes,
dog
I
in
think
this
so.
fight.
Yeah. But so I want to recommend that one, and also Sturgill Simpson's Metamodern Sounds in Country Music, which came out the following year in 2014.
Okay.
And that is the one that kind of shows you that you can be from Appalachia and still be psychedelic and crazy and still be country.
Oh, yeah. People have no idea how psychedelic. This is the most surreal part of the country, and no
In
one
some
has
ways
a
it
clue.
is.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
So
All
anyway,
right.
those are two albums that everybody ought to pick up and listen to.
All right, I'm going to jump all the way back to 1983,
Oh
an
my
album
gosh.
by Yellow, Y-E-L-L-O. You Gotta Say Yes to Another Excess. Now, this was before any kind of music writing, or I was in school,
Right.
and all that stuff, so I don't have any... but it's a Swiss band. It was a trio. It was Dieter Meyer and Boris Blank and a guy named Carlos Perron. It was his last album. But they are they're like a merge, an early 80s merge of electronica and exotica. So that could not be a better combination for someone like
Total
me.
Chuck music.
And it was just great.
If only
Now,
they
these,
were women.
these are the guys. It's Yellow without the W at the end. These are the guys who did "Oh Yeah" from Ferris Bueller. Right. So it's the "Oh Yeah." So all that stuff, and these songs, they're just great. They're the first song is like a venture through the jungle. They do a song that's actually very romantic and surreal called "Lost Again." Then they have a song called "Heavy Whispers," where the kind of the punch point is almost like a backbeat. It's just a woman doing the scream, the sharp scream, and it just like it punctuates the song. It's great. And then my favorite is a song called "I Love You," which just has either a woman or a modulated man's voice, but there's a guy who's singing and he's very earnest and everything, and she just keeps saying, "I love you, I love you," and the chorus is she goes, "I love you," and he goes, "I know, I love you, I know." So anyway, it's a lot of fun, and exotic and electronica together, very inventive, and it still holds up. It still sounds fresh to me because no one ever did anything like that since, really. That's it.
Okay.
Anybody else? Got anything? All right. We're going to get out of here and think about the future, and we
see
hope
you
you all
in
have enjoyed it.
25.
And we'll see you. Yeah, we'll see you in 25. And good night, day, wherever you're listening to us. And we'll be back.
You've been listening to How We Heard It with Chuck Campbell and Wayne Bledsoe, a podcast about music, art, culture, movies, whatever they want to talk about. How We Heard It was recorded in Knoxville, Tennessee at the Arbor Studio by John Baker. If you believe you've been abducted by aliens during the listening to this podcast, we take no responsibility for that. How We Heard It is a Tear Owl production, and if you'd like to reach out to Chuck or Wayne, send an email to howweheardit@gmail.com. Come on back next week and we'll have another show for you.